and we will begin Wushka. I'll just share my Wushka screen. So what we endeavour today is to cover off on a few things. One being, actually, let me just go back. Sorry, always do that. I just meant to mention in the chat box, you can see 3 dots to the side. At the end of the session, you can click on those 3 dots. The down arrow will then take you to a save option, and you can save the chat so you can reference the questions later. What we're going to cover off today is the teacher dashboard, teacher planning, classroom management, setting up reading groups, and looking at your data that you collate together with the comprehension quiz questions that are in Wushka. You would have all received an activation link, and you should have followed the prompts with that activation link, and that would have provided you with a login to Wushka. Wushka is a cloud-based program, therefore there are no apps that you need to maintain, especially with BYOD or bring your own devices to schools and in the old world, where you need passwords to download apps, etc. So it is a cloud-based program. I suggest saving the wushka.com.au if you're in Australia, or wushka.co.nz if you're in New Zealand, to the home screen, and that way it's easily accessible to students. And when you come across, so when you go to wushka.com.au or whichever site is where which country you're in, click on the login. Your username will be the email address that you provided to us, or your program coordinator provided to us, and the password will reference the password that you created. If you are the program coordinator, you would have received an administration username and password, and that's what you will use. So you put your username as your email address, password in here, and click login. If you are the program coordinator, you will receive, or you will see 2 dashboards like so: programmer coordinator dashboard and the teacher dashboard. For all teachers, you will only receive the teacher dashboard, and I'm going to use that today as the base of the Wushka presentation. So initially when you log in, I would always suggest that you go to the helpful resources initially. I just want to go through a few points here. So the resources for schools, you will find the teacher user setup guide here, which is also a good reference point. I've already had some questions in the chat box regarding the reading levels. There is a correlation chart that we have in the helpful resources. And in here you'll find fondness for now and reading recovery reading levels. Our levels are based on the ready to read colour wheel, which was developed by the New Zealand Department of Education and Learning Media. There are 15 boxes of levels, going from levels 1 through to 31++ throughout Wushka. I'm going to go back to my helpful resource now so you can print that off. I've also had many questions about PM levels. Ours are pretty much 1-to-1 with the PM levels, as approximately as you can get. So that's an easy fit if you're doing PMs at school. We also have support materials for reading assessment. There's been some other questions that have come through the webinars that we've run. So the reading assessment materials that we have on the system, and I will just go back and do that again. There we go. Lots of you have probably run many reading assessments over the time of teaching. You've got the algorithm in here, all the teaching guides. So the question has been, how do we do reading assessments through remote learning? It's the same as if you were in the classroom, only I'd be using a digital platform. You could be using many different ones. I know that there's Zoom being used, Google Classroom, Seesaw, lots of other platforms. This can go across any of those because it's a cloud-based program. What I suggest you do is this here document will show you all the titles within Wushka that have a reading record. The reading record is actually a PDF. So you'll have one student logged in a Zoom call, for example. They will read to you and you'll mark off your reading assessment PDF, and then you can use the algorithm and work out their levels. You'll notice here on this reading assessment document the letters W, and there'll be an S and then a D. So those particular texts focus on word, discussion cards, and sequencing. So that's your reading assessments. You'll find that guide. I call it an index of which titles have reading assessment. You'll also find in here literacy progress markers. This is like a continuum to highlight, have students achieved the reading, comprehension, vocab, knowledge and print concepts required, along with all the other assessment that you'll be doing before moving them on to another level. So that's just another support piece that we can help you in guiding you through the levels and your students. Here on the right-hand side, you'll notice that there are resources to send home. I highlight this because we've been asked about parent letters and emails to home and student logins. I would use this parent email and pair that up with the student logins, which I will show you in the next steps when you're sending the information back home to your parents. So you can download this, send it in an email along with the student logins. It's just a bit of information just to guide the parents with Wushka. So they're in your helpful resources. I go back now to my dashboard. My dashboard always takes you back to the main menu. In here, I also like to just highlight tips and tricks. You'll notice in here there are some information that we've received from teachers on how they're using Wushka in their classroom and little tips and tricks that they use. Please feel free to yourselves to add information because teachers are all in this brand new learning environment right now, and any help and support that they can get from other teachers and how you're doing things, I think is really appreciated, and we will populate that and submit that to our Wushka site as well. So feel free to put things in there as you go along. We're all on this very big learning curve right now. I'll go back to my dashboard. Right, so now I'm going to show you where you do your teacher planning, and then I will go into classroom management. So reading boxes is the main library, and this is where you'll do most of your planning. So you'll notice here, these are the leveled boxes. I will highlight to you the plus. The plus expands the box, so you'll see all levels within that box. You'll notice that there's quite a few in the lower levels. So on average, there's probably between 50 and 60 titles across the levels. They obviously reduce as they get into the higher levels. So that's levels 1 right through to 31 plus as I get to the bottom. Expand that box, and there's a few more titles in there. There wouldn't be 50 titles because it's a longer text and it's for a different purpose. Children at the lower levels tend to go through more frequently, so you require more titles down here. You'll also notice here in the grey, I've read it and how many times you've read it. That's just highlighting to you that you've been reading it or you've used that text. It doesn't determine whether you can or cannot open it. It just means it's just a guide to show you that. Now, this filtering on the side here, this is where you'll do your planning. So if you have a learning intention for the week and it's a particular units of inquiry, you'll be looking at a theme. You can click on the down arrow and the different themes will come up. So let's say we're doing safety, for example. You could filter results, and any text that has a safety focus will come up through the different levels. It doesn't necessarily mean that you'll find a text covering every theme in every level. It's just another way for you to guide you through the different levels and themes. You've also got the option for your comprehension strategies. So your learning intention could be compare and contrast, for example. Click on that, filter results, and any text that has a compare and contrast focus is going to come up. To reset the filter, you just click reset and it brings it back to its original state. Click on filter again. We've also got fiction and non-fiction. If you notice that there's a child that's possibly not reading a lot of non-fiction, then you might want to filter non-fiction text so you can allocate text to those students. And I'll talk about that in the group, allocating group text shortly. Text type here. If you're doing a writing focus, you can look at a particular text type, filter the results, and then load the text that way and reset. I'm going to filter by a comprehension strategy because whilst I'm in here, I want to show you how you can bookmark it. So you're planning, so you're allocating text to reference later. So I'll just load up toys. So when you can find, wherever you see the cover of the book, you can load the book. So I'm actually in the teacher management panel, so the students wouldn't see everything that's on this page, but when you could load the book from here, you'll see the description. This will give you a bit of a blurb on what the text is about. You'll also get more information, the school reader details. So this box here, the students do not get to see, but this highlights to you the phonics and focus, the vocab focus, the high frequency words, and the content of the text. You'll also have a little activity that you may want to follow on with. If you're doing a remote instructional learning session or guided reading session, you may want them to follow up with that activity. You'll also find here information about the strategy. So we're talking about cause and effect. And in here, your high frequency words are this, is, and are. Okay. So you can actually look at the learning intention there. And if you've got a particular high frequency word that you want to focus on for the week, you could look at that as well. You'll also find all the support materials to support the text that you're looking at. So you have your activity guide here. This activity, sorry, not guide, this activity is a PDF. So there's been a few teachers talk to me about different PDF apps that are available, things like Showbie, Explain Everything, and there's another one which I will show you in a PowerPoint presentation of PowerPoint. I believe Google Classroom has a add-on that can allow or enable students to edit PDFs. I'd be using that tool, so you could then download this PDF, email it to your students, they open it using those apps, and that way they can edit the information, take a photo or screenshot it or save it and send it back to you and put that in your homework folder or students learning outcome folder. You've also got a lesson plan. You can just view this. You don't need to be printing off all these sheets. So this is the beauty of Wushka. Oops, sorry, just lost you for a moment. Oops, so excuse me, sorry. In here, you've got all of the teaching notes. So as you're working through the text, you've got your suggested questions against the pages, also against chapters. You've got a writing activity at the end. So this is just a normal lesson plan that you would find in your print world, but I would be viewing it. You've also got printable versions of the reader. Someone recently came up with the idea of the wordless one. In a classroom environment, that would tend to be used for a writing prompt. You could use that to get the students to retell the story in their own words. You might want to look at sequencing, beginning, middle, and end to get them to reconstruct the story. Using a snipping tool, you may be able to take parts of that out and use that as and copy and paste that into a Word document and send that to the students. I'm just giving you some ideas on this new remote learning that we have now, environment of ways to utilize this when you're not able to print them. And this particular content here has a word card focus. If this was one of the books from out of that reading that had a reading assessment, you'd also have a page for the reading assessment piece as well. When you look at the text here, let me go into the book. So the book opens up like so. This play button, this is your audio. So when you're asking students to narrate or have the text on audio and be narrated, and you're encouraging them to do that, they do need to press play for that to occur. The book looks like a double page spread. It is a double page spread, so that's what a book looks like as well. So I'm just going to go through all the text here to the end. The cross is how you log out of the book and end the reading. And I'm just going to show you the quiz questions now. So all the quiz questions, they are all based around literal, inferential, and valuative questions. The more literal questions are based in the lower levels, and it's multiple choice. And this is where our data comes from. So we're all focusing on it. This is reading, comprehension, and writing program. So I'm just going to go through the quiz questions. We've had a lot of questions about them being narrated. They are not narrated. The quiz questions are not narrated. In a school environment, you'd normally be in a guided reading session, and there'd be teacher involvement or a parent helper or learning support person discussing those questions. At home, in this environment we're with now, we'd hope that there's some support from the parents, carers, or older siblings possibly, and they could read the questions to the students. But they are not narrated. Say no here. If you've looked at the content, you've looked at the description and the information here, you know what your learning intention is for the week, and this fits the model, then I suggest you bookmark this. Now, you may be bookmarking this for guided reading. You could be bookmarking it because you want to do it as a shared reading or modelling, so you can model the cause and effect. You could be bookmarking it because you want to bookmark it for a specific take-home focus for students. Now we're going to your class management. So this is where you set up your classes. So you would have all received your logins. When you've logged in, you'll come up and with your class will be here on the side. If you're in multiple classes, you'll have multiple tabs on the side. So you can have multiple teachers in the one class. If you work in a learning community, which some schools here in Victoria do, whereas all the year one cohort work together and teachers take different kids from different classes, you can collate them all into one class and all teachers be in that one class, because you might be using reading groups and taking students from different classes. So this is my class list. You would have received the same. Your students' details would be here on the left. You won't have a password set. None of the columns will be set except for a couple of the standardized areas. Your first name, you can edit this. If you wanted to change this to a nickname, you can click on this and change the name. Red tick on any of this panel is your save button. Surname, now the username here, that cannot be changed. So that is unique to this particular student and the data is held against that username, therefore it cannot be changed. And the password. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to my manage whole class, which is click on manage class, and I'm going to set the whole class password. Now we try to keep this simple. So you might want to call it Wushka. Click set password and we'll change all the passwords. So the whole class can have the same password. You may have existing platforms you're using right now. You can use the same password that you're using on another platform. Go back to manage class again. We're going to not do the class reading level, and the reason for that is because most students are reading at different levels, so we will do that by individual student. Class narration is automatically loaded as set to yes, but you do have the option to change the whole class here to no if you require, turn it on or off. If it is set to no, they will not get the play button on their books. Click manage class again. So this is the first steps you do when you're setting up your class. Click on class quizzes. So these quiz questions are referring to the quiz questions after every book. You've got options. Now at school and home, really at the moment, isn't relevant because the school hours are any hours during home time because we're doing the remote learning. So I would suggest this is set to compulsory. The reason we're doing is that this is for comprehension. Therefore, we want to ensure that they are answering those questions and do they understand what they are reading. So I tend to put that as compulsory. We can customize this by individual students if you don't want that for a particular student. Click on manage class again, and this is where we're going to create our reading groups. You can use the same reading group names you had at school, which most schools tend to have or classes tend to have. I've got some already set in here, but you can create whatever you like. So let's call it Wushka guided reading. Dolphins. Click on create group. Okay, so you can do this each time for your reading groups and click your reading groups. You can notice I've got different ones in here. That is fine. It's whatever purpose you have for a group. So where you want the same text being read by a number of students, you're not restricted by how many groups you have. Class permissions. So you're setting here the class permissions for the reading group. I would suggest that this is turned to off, depending on the purpose of the reading group. So if you're using it for guided reading, sorry, let me go back to permissions. If I'm using this for guided reading, I'd have that turned off and I would only turn it on. So when student B, I'm going to allocate Zoom time and do some guided reading with this student. So I'm going to put him in his group. He's going to be in my teacher-led discussion instruction group. And I'm going to turn that on at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning because we are going to do a guided reading session at 10 o'clock. So this is where I'm going to go back to manage class. I'm just afraid of running out of time. This is where you generate your student logins. So we've set class permissions to the guided reading or your group work. Now we're going to generate the student logins. If you click on student login, what's going to come up is the pages of, it's a full page A4 PDF of all your students. Now, obviously for privacy reasons, you would not send this via email. I would snip out each login. Now you can use a snipping tool for that. I'm not sure if you're all aware of that, but snip each one out and put that into an email. You do not send your logins until we complete this table. So I'm going to show you the rest of the table now. So we've already set the password, so the reading level. So I recommend this as your independent take-home level. And you'll see the reason why in the next step. So I'm saying that the Wushka student, his independent reading level is the yellow box, level 6 to 8, red tick to save it. I'm going to give him access, and you have options. Reading group only, if I only ever wanted him to have access to his reading group. Reading level only, so I only want him to have access to his at-home independent reading levels, box 6 to 8. Reading level 1 level above, if you wanted to give them some extension. Reading level and 1 level below. Now this is giving them the whole box. So it's giving them a whole box level 6 to 8 and the 1 box below, giving them lots of choice for their take home. And you can continue with the other options here. I tend to use either reading group only right now in this remote world or reading level and 1 level below. We'll put reading level and 1 level below. Reading group, so we've got Wushka and the Nikki Dolphins. So I'm going to put him in my Dolphins take home. So you can only be in a reading group at one time. You can't be, you can move them in and out of the reading group like so when you want to, but they can only have access to one reading group at one time. If you are going to use the reading groups for take home, so we've had lots of questions about allocating maybe 5 books a week for take home. They're afraid that the children will run out of books. You could create a reading group called My Dolphins Take Home Group. So every day they are and have this set to on, the reading group permission to on, so they always have access to that reading group text. Again, when you're ready for your guided reading session, you just need to move them into the guided reading session. You run your session, you finish your session, and then you can take them back into take home so they have access to the take home. That is really drilling down access to the students. Or you could just leave it open to the reading books. When you're having reading groups only here, you need to change this to reading group. If you only ever want them to have access to the reading group material that you are allocating, you have access to reading group only. If you're happy for them to have access to a whole box, reading level 1 level below, and then you can also have them in their guided reading. Guided reading, teacher-led instruction or parent-carer instruction, and turn that on or off, depending on the purpose and who's running it. I also recommend that you add a new fictitious student. So you can add a student over here. And use the fictitious student to demonstrate to your students how to log in, how to read a text. I'm now going to go to class statistics. This is where you get the statistics on the quiz questions. Over here, the quiz questions are average percentage based on the comprehension questions, inferential, evaluative, and literal. And the time that they've spent reading. Obviously, if they've dipped in and dipped out, that's fine. But if you find some consistency and they're not reading long enough because we want them to reading properly, this is a really good snapshot to show you what the students are doing. I'm going to go into individual student statistics now. Oh, I don't want to run out of time. Okay, so student statistics. Oh, sorry, I should go to my reading groups. Beg your pardon. Reading groups. So we've set up all our reading groups in the classroom management over here. And the reason I tell you to do the planning in the main library is because you can only filter between fiction and non-fiction here. The main library allowed you to look at all the content and bookmark it. When you bookmarked the content previously, it went into my bookmarks folder here, but it also highlights a gold star to you, which then means that you allocate, you go, I wanted to use that for my guided reading. I'm going to choose a group. This is my teacher-led group, my guided reading group. I'm going to add the text into that group. And you just add the text in. So when the students Wushka A, B, and F log in and you've got the groups accessible, so it's turned on, they will have access to these books. If it's turned off, they won't have access to these books until you're ready for them to have access. The magnifying glass can give you a snapshot of the text, and then you can jump into the book and go to the lesson plans from here as well. If you make an error, you can just click on the cross and it will take it out of the group and put it into here. If you've done the text in your guided reading session, click on the folder and it will archive it and bring it back to the library, but then you'll have a folder. So that says to me that I've already done these books with these students. If I chose another group, I may not have done these books with the next group because you've got pluses. You've also got a toolbar here, which means you can archive all the books, rename your reading group if you need to, or delete the reading group. So we'll do that again. Select a lot from the library. You're not restricted by the level of the students as to where you take the text from to add to the reading library. I've got to show you student login as well. I'm just going to go to student statistics. So Wushka A, which was my student A previously, this will highlight to you what they've done the last 7 days. In here, you can see that on Tuesday, they read 5 books. These are the texts that they read, whether it was fiction, non-fiction, time spent reading and time that they read. We really don't advocate students reading at 10 o'clock at night in their bed. So taking the devices at night into their rooms. So that's a really good guide as to what they are doing. And I'll show you where else you can find that. New versus reread. If rereading is one of your strategies, we encourage the students to, we added bookmarks. We encourage students to create favorites. So when they've read a text, to add it as a favorite so they can go back and reread that text. This is a total number of books read. Fiction versus non-fiction. So this student here is really not picking any non-fiction text. You may want to create a group called non-fiction text, allocate non-fiction text to that group, assign the student to that group, and then they will have non-fiction text, and that's what you're recommending that they are reading. Read with narration. So if you're encouraging listen to reading and that they have pressed play, you can see that they've actually pressed play and they are listening to reading. As you go down further, this is a visual of the quiz results. Remember, we were doing the comprehension quiz results, literal, evaluative, and inferential questions. This shows you what day that they read, what time that they read. So like I was saying earlier, if that's 11 o'clock at night, we really don't encourage that. And this is a really good view. Parents will actually see the same view if they're looking in their students' login, and students see the same view. The only difference being they obviously don't see all the students here on the left, but they also here, you've got an extra view which highlights what question was asked and where they went wrong. You can actually copy and paste this into a spreadsheet if you wanted to. You can also print the PDF quiz reports as well. I will just jump back to the class list because we've had a lot of questions over the last few days about the class list and being able to print this as a spreadsheet. You can just copy and paste. Just copy it like so and paste it into Excel and it'll bring up the spreadsheet. Or, you know, create a spreadsheet for you. You've also got a total list of all reading that a student has done. You can look at the whole class in reading records. So in here, you've got all the students, all your whole class's details, what titles have been read, etc., and time spent reading. If you notice a pattern with your class that they're really not reading properly, you know, 5 seconds, 4 seconds, I would be having possibly a classroom Zoom meeting and have a chat to all the kids about their reading methods. It's really about linking home to school too as well, pathway from home to school. Now I'm going to show you a student login. Let me just go into, I'll just check chat questions before I do that. Okay, reading groups. Okay, awesome. Okay, lots about the reading groups. I might just go back over the reading groups. So I'm in reading groups now, in a moment. This is where you allocate the text. You can also, if you've forgotten to create a new group, like earlier I was talking about a non-fiction group, let's call it non-fiction group. Okay, and I'm going to go to my non-fiction group down here. I'm going to look up non-fiction text and I'm going to allocate it. Now I'm going to go to my class list because I just really want to visually show you what this is going to do. Now I'm going to use Wushka students. So I'm saying that here's the reading level and level below. I'm going to put him into that non-fiction group that I just created just so you can see the process. I'm going to turn it on because I want him to have access to that. I would, if I wanted only him to have access to reading group only, then I would have the level access changed to reading group only. For this purpose today, I really want to demonstrate what a student will see if they had reading level and one level below and the whole boxes. So I'm now going to go to student login, and I'm going to log in as Wushka student. A student cannot, if you log a student in, or as a student logs in, or as a teacher you're logging in as a student, they cannot go back on the back button and become a teacher. So here you've got reading group non-fiction only. So I've allocated this text, I've turned it on so they have access to it. So you could be saying to your student, I really want you to start with these books first before moving into the boxes. Remember, reading level, which is his independent reading level yellow. He can have access to this whole box, make a selection as he chooses, and the one level below. If you have a reading book in a reading group, or a text in a reading group, I always recommend, if you want them to access that text after the reading group's turned off, because remember, you're going to allocate a number of texts, because this could be over a few weeks and it's all through your planning. You don't want them to move on to other text because it normally is an unseen text. Ask them to create a favorite so that they've got access to that when they go out of the group or when you turn the group off. They will still have access to that if you've given them, they've been assigned the text, you've read the book with them, you've worked through the text, added as a favorite, then they will have access after you turn the group off. You'll notice that they've got the information here, they have the activity, and if it's a text out of their take home, we do encourage the next read as well. This is their my page, same detail that you had earlier. They have their favorites at the top. They then have the same tables and graphs and pie charts that we had earlier. They get the quiz results in the next page. And this is the date and time. Again, I just like to highlight the time of night that I have been into classes that, kids at age 9 reading at 11 o'clock at night. So I think it's an important key to look at. And then they can go to their favorites file here. And that's what they'll see. I'm just going to log out now and go back and log back in. Just before I do that, I'm going to share another screen. Because I just want to go over a few points. So earlier I was talking about the class list, the management list. I just copied and pasted and just showing this to you. This is a spreadsheet. So it just cuts and pastes into an Excel spreadsheet if you want to. And that way you can sort by student, etc. Key points to remember that I've gone through. Oh, I may have missed that one. Google Chrome is the preferred browser on most devices. You can use Safari and Firefox. Internet Explorer is not, it's a bit outdated. So don't use Internet Explorer. Prior to giving the student username and passwords, like when you generate those student login pages, before you do that and hand that out, ensure that you've set up their levels, their take-home level, and their level access and groups if you're utilising that. Red tick is your save on your class list. The reading level in the first column, so I'm referring back to your level setup and your class setup, is your independent take-home easy reading level. And that's to ensure that the level access gives you a few more options. Add that fictitious student so you can demonstrate the features to your students without creating data on an active student. You can remove them later on. The 2 apps that can be used to edit PDFs is Showbie and Explain Everything. Also like to mention that there will be additional webinars being held weekly. There's an email going out, I believe, at the beginning of each week showing which webinars are available. And if you've got any questions, or certainly if you require some one-to-one training with your school, email support@wushka.com.au and we will get your local Wushka specialist in touch with you to arrange time. That login page I was referring to, that's what you would see as a full PDF, and then to cut it or snip it out and put it into an email like so. That's an example of what I did. There we go, Cami extension on Google Classroom. That was the other one I was referring to before that's got, that enables you to edit PDFs. Cami extension on Google Classroom. So I don't use Google Classroom, but maybe some of you know of that extension that you can get, and it will enable you to edit the PDFs. I'm just going to go to chat now and just have a little look if we need to go back to some other parts of the system to review. Okay, Emily, hi everybody. Emily, I'm just going to go back to over the reading groups. So manage classes. So set your reading groups up first. So I'm going to create a group. So we go into create reading group. And we're going to call it my learning support. Oh, we won't call it learning support. Let's call it oranges. You might use colors, whatever you're using right now. Create group. Create group. That's now created my group. I want to assign the group to a student to the group. Click on the reading group column, and we're going to put the student into the reading group. So it's oranges, red tick. Student B, he's also in my oranges group. Let's just do more than one so you can see what I'm doing. I have the reading groups on, but I actually want them off because this is going to be my instructional. So I'm going to turn all my reading groups off. Class permissions, turn them all off because I'm setting up guided reading unseen text. Beautiful. So we have 2 students in my orange group. I'm now going to go to reading groups and assign the text. So I go to my oranges group. You've got my 2 students here. I'm going to take a book from my turquoise text. I'm going to add funny fish, the funny fish. Oh, but hang on, I know I'm doing space as a learning intention or theme or unit of inquiry. I want to just check the content. So this is looking at sequencing, space, exploration. Here are my high frequency words. Perfect. This is all the content. Yep, this is going to fit my model plus. Beautiful. Now, when I'm now going to tell my 2 students that tomorrow we're going to do a 10 o'clock Zoom session and we're going to focus on that text. We're going to do our guided reading session. So I log in at 9:55 and I'm going to turn it on for those students so that they've got access, because they do not have access until I turn it on in this instance. Great. So when the students log in, they will now have access to my oranges group and they will see those 2 books. I asked them both to log in and load next stop space. We've done our session. I'm now going to archive it because I know I've finished that session with those students. Prior to archiving, get the students to add it as a favorite if you want them to revisit the text and review it. They've added it as a favorite. Once they've done that, you can remove it. It comes back into your library and it's now got a folder closed. It doesn't stop you from re-adding it into your group. So if I take it out and archive it, it comes into my library, it's archived. I click on the archive folder and it comes back in. You're not stopped from using it again. If you want to remove a book that you don't or won't use, just click the cross. It goes out, it comes back in here. And I'll check chat now. Does that answer your question? Sorry, Emily? Or do you have another question about that? If you can just, I'm available to the chat now so I can see your questions as they're coming through. If you'd like to ask any further questions. Yes, the audio is available on all options. If you want to, you can customize that. That's to Fiona. I know that Kiri's answered that question, but you can manage it in here. So manage the narration. You can turn it off if you don't want it on. I've got some teachers that turn it on one week and then turn it off for the next. There's about 5 more minutes to go if you have any further questions. I'm just checking to make sure I've covered everything. It doesn't, okay, so Selena, the reading level, it's up to you how you manage your reading groups. It can be anything. Normally your unseen text, your take home or your independent level is below your unseen instructional level because you're normally working at a high level text. So I tend tends to be that the reading group has a higher level text than their take-home access. They don't have to have access to their reading level so long as they're in the reading group. So the reading group is your instructional, guided reading. The reading level here is your take-home. If you don't want them to have access to, the only reason you turn the take-home off and put to reading group only is if you didn't want them to have access to the whole box of books for their take-home. Yes, Beata, I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. The teacher password is different. You would have created your own password through the activation link that you would have received. Have a play with the student login. So, you know, create that fictitious student because then you can see what the student sees. Yes, so, okay, so Selena, if they are in, for example, class list, if they are in the red level and you're giving them access to that level, so here is your level access, that reading level only, they would have level access to all the books in the red level. Correct. So I said red level only, they're in my group. I'm going to turn the group off so you can see that. No, Beata, the parents do not manage this at all. It's all teacher driven and under teacher instruction. So I'm going to just log in as a student now, Wushka, so you will see that he will have access to all the red level. Oh, I forgot to change. I forgot to press save. Okay, so let me log back out. And I'll show you that. So what you would do, so I'm going to go back into the chat. Okay, let me just show for Lila, I've accidentally doubled up on students in more than one class. How do I fix this? So if you go to manage class list, click on manage class and go to archive student, your list of students will come up. Just click on the student you no longer want in there. Click on that. And that will remove them from your class. Reading level, so here I'm going to give them access to, you know, where it was, so it wasn't fletched. Let me see. Okay, reading it can be whatever they want to be. No. Okay, can you set a student a level of readers and allocate them to the reading group with that one book? Yes, so what you could do is have the reading level only plus the reading group. And have that turned on if you wanted that one book available to them. So reading group permissions, so I'm saying that these students, this is referring to your reading groups. If it is, these are the options. You've got on, so accessible at all times. You've got during school hours, which is really not relevant right now, and off, so on and off. So here, if it's on, they'll have access to the reading group at all times. So that could be, if you had a non-fiction text allocated for take home into the group, then my oranges, or let's just show you, sorry. So this here, my dolphins take home. So we're saying that the Wushka student, he has access to box yellow and he has box available or turned on the reading group text for dolphins take home. You could say, I only want him to have access to the take home only, so it's reading group only. So therefore, you're actually giving them access to 5 books that you want them to read and the leveled box as well. So you wouldn't give them access to a guided reading text unless you're going to run a guided reading session. So you're going to do a Zoom call, you're doing a guided reading session with 5 students. They log in, then they've got access to the book because you want to read along with them. Cool. Thanks, Lena. Reshow 2 teachers. Okay. So how 2 teachers can access the same students? you need to go back to your program coordinator. So the program coordinator would be the person that initiated Wushka in the school. They can create a class and they will move the two teachers into the class. So I'm going to go to show you this, switch to school. So your programmer coordinator will have a page like so. She'll click onto classes. There are classes. You'll have multiple teachers down here, more than one. Sorry, I'm only one teacher. You drag and drop the two teachers into the class. And that you'll have two teachers in this class, and therefore you'll both have access using your own teacher email address and your own personal login password to log in, but you'll have access to all the students from that class. Did that help with the question from, sorry, I'm scrolling up. It's a bit hard to see on the screen, one moment. Oh, Beata, yeah, was that enough questions for you, Beata? Yeah, okay, great. Okay, everybody, it's we've just gone a little bit over. So again, the support at wushka.com.au if you've got any questions. You can save your chat, remember the 3 dots. If I show you that now, you can save the chat if you require. I'm just going to go back to that screen. So the 3 dots, here we go. So go to the bottom of the chat, click on the 3 dots here, and it'll come up with save. Just click save. It'll save the questions and answers. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your support. And good luck with all your new remote learning models. And thank you, Kiralee, for answering all the questions for me.